It's February 7th, 2020. I'm Sheila Gunn Reid, and you're watching Ezra Levant's Battleground. Oh, hey everybody, it's good to see you. I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. I'm filling in for Ezra Levant today on Battleground. My co-host David Menzies is on his way to the studio because this is a last-minute gig for both of us. Now, for those of you who don't know, Battleground is our weekly live show, and it's probably one of my favorite shows on the network, except for my own show, but I'm a little bit biased about that, where we get to interact with you. And you get to interact with us, and it's unscripted, and you sort of get to see us, if David ever shows up, discussing things that interest us in our own element, and you sort of get to see us how we really are instead of how we present ourselves on camera. And you get to interact with us. I've got two computer screens going here, so bear with me. One's doing the heavy lifting, and one's helping me know what's going on. You get to super chat with us. You can throw a couple bucks at us. Google, YouTube, they take about 30% off the top, but it'll highlight your comment and we'll see it, we'll read it. If I miss it, Mr. Producer in my ear will either email it to me or just let me know in my ear that I haven't seen it. And you can ask us a question, you can leave, we'll read. It's a good way for us to pay the bills because unlike the CBC, we don't get Justin Trudeau bailout money. The taxpayer isn't forced to support us. You support us because you want to. And so this is just another way for you to do that. I don't know if David's ever going to make it to the office. So if you guys at home are going to have to put up with me talking to myself by myself for a while, at least until he gets into the studio. I don't know how my husband does it. Let's talk about something, I guess, a little bit closer to home for me, although it's of national interest. The Liberals are kicking the can down the road, it sounds like, with regard to the Teck Frontier oil sands mine. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Teck Frontier oil sands mine, it's been in the approval stage now for 10 plus years. And Teck is a $20 billion project. Actually, it's a little over $20 billion, closer to $21 billion. It's going to create 7,000 jobs. They've gone out of their way to have agreements in place with 14 Indigenous communities and bands that are affected by the mine, giving those Indigenous communities right of first refusal for procurement and services, contract, job training, in some instances, like profit sharing with the company, to get them on board. For the Fort Mackay Métis, they said that this is, their way out of generational poverty. And it sounds like the Liberals are not going to approve this oil sands mine. The Liberals are fighting amongst themselves because some powerful Liberals around Justin Trudeau, they want to approve it. They want to seem like they're actually doing something for Alberta oil and gas while hammering us with a carbon tax on the other side. But some of the more radical or maybe more honest Liberals who aren't putting on this pro-oil sands face, they're pressuring Justin Trudeau to not approve the mine, which is going to cause, I think, separatist sentiment in Alberta, the likes of which we've probably never seen. I think the Liberals, at the very least, they're not going to approve this oil sands mine before their latest budget gets voted on. And the reason I say that is because they need the NDP to hang on to power, and the NDP will turn on the Liberals in that budget vote and cause the government to fall if the Liberals do approve Frontier. So the Liberals are willing to sell Alberta down the river, nuke 7,000 jobs, just to maintain their stranglehold on power. And I think we have a clip of Jason Kenney talking about what this new mine what it means to Alberta and why it needs to be approved. Mr. Producer, if you have that.
Their current deadline is the end of February for a decision on that. And I've been very clear to the Prime Minister. If they say no to this project, then they are signaling his earlier statement that he wants to phase out the oil sands. I'm confident that the federal government will respond to some of our demands for fairness, and we will hold their feet to the fire. Responding to First Nations and Indigenous Canadians doesn't simply mean saying no when there is some opposition. It means saying yes to projects and prosperity when there is broad Indigenous support. So that is part of my message to Prime Minister Trudeau. This isn't about just some mining company, and by the way, it has a reputation as being one of the most progressive mining companies in the world. It's about saying yes to those First Nations. Go and talk to the leader of the Fort McKay Métis Nation, who says this is their hope for a future, a project like this. So please, to the Prime Minister, don't listen to foreign-funded activists who are occupying offices in Vancouver and Toronto. Send one of your ministers up there, send the Environment Minister up there to sit down with some of these First Nations, not even the leaders, how about the grassroots folks who work in projects like this, who own contracting companies because of it. People who like in the Fort McKay Reserve, in the course of 4 decades, have moved from total poverty. By the way, when the European left shut down the fur trade for our northern Indigenous people, they were left with no industry. But inspired leadership created employment through partnerships with resource projects, and they're saying, let us have a future on that. So this is a message I implore the federal government. If reconciliation means something, surely it means saying yes to economic development for First Nations people.
David!
Well, you know, Sheila, I've always said,
David.
I'm your 60-minute man. All I need is 1 hour's notice, and I'm here with you. But I only got 52 minutes notice, so I'm 8 minutes late. You know, I'm kind of having a WKBW moment. Everyone who's grown up in the 70s in Southern Ontario would watch Channel 7, and there was a show called Rocket Ship 7, hosted by Dave Thomas. But he was doing double duty. The show would go off the air at 9, and would have to change out of his rocket ship costume into a regular suit for dialing for dollars. So he always came on the set 5 minutes late. And I guess that's the situation here. So a shout out to the good old days of WKBW. It's 11 o'clock. Do you know where your children are? TV for our Southern Ontario viewers. What do you think about that?
David, you are so old. Everyone at home, I know that I could see from the super chat, or not from the super chats, there are some super chats that I should get to, but yeah, we might be having some audio difficulties in studio. I'm not taking responsibility for any of it, because my audio setup here is chef's kiss perfect. I don't know what's going on in the studio, but we'll try our best to get that sorted out, if you'll just kindly bear with us. We've got a couple super chats here. We've got one from Bernard Hutchison for $2.79 Canadian. What happens if Teck gets cut by commie liberals? Well, it's going to be very bad. However, it's going to be very bad for Albertans, but what can we do? We've already voted out all the liberals we can around here. And I'm not sure if Jason Kenney is willing to do the things he needs to do to hold the federal government to account for what they're about to do to us. Encana left. They abandoned their head offices here in Alberta and they moved to the United States. We've seen an evacuation of capital in Alberta, and really, the Liberals have faced no real consequences for any of it. They lost, I don't know, what, 3, 4 seats in the West? Who cares? They don't need us to vote for them to win the country. So something very serious has to happen. And by the way, has anybody been paying attention to what Rachel Notley's been saying about Teck? She spent 4 years pretending to be pretty darn pro-oil and gas when we knew she wasn't. I mean, we're not all hard of remembering. But she's been virtually silent as this major oil sands project is on the cusp of being canceled by the Liberals, and no one will ever invest in Alberta ever again. I mean, if Teck, for all their homework that they've done and all the agreements they reach with Indigenous communities, cannot get approval in Alberta, nobody can. There has to be more serious consequences for the federal government, be it Alberta's own police force, our own pension plan, a firewall built around the province. I mean, there's a lot we can learn from what Quebec has done, while also not behaving like the perpetual welfare queens that Quebec is. And we'll have one more super chat. Sorry, David, go ahead.
You know, what this reminds me of, Sheila, as you said, the vast majority of Natives want this project to go through, correct?
All 14 that are touched by this project have agreements signed with Teck that involved generational prosperity for their communities. Jobs, job training,
Yep.
profit sharing, procurement contracts. I mean, it is a game changer for Indigenous communities that are touched by this.
So,
all 14.
So
have
here's
signed
what
on.
this reminds me of in a way. I'm thinking back 2016, the Washington Post did a poll exclusively of Native Americans, something like the number was 600. What do you think about the Washington Redskins logo and name? And I bet you, because it was the Washington Post doing this survey, but kudos for them for publishing the results, 91% said they had no problem with it. They actually liked it. So then you ask, well then, who's offended by this nickname? And likewise, who's offended by this project that's going to help Natives? It's basically white social justice warriors taking the position of, you know what, you Indians are too stupid to be offended,
Yeah.
so we're going to be offended for you, and we're going to go to... This is such chutzpah, Sheila, it is off the charts, because that's what's really going on here.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've listened to Indigenous leaders from the Fort McKay area talk about how little money they actually receive for their communities from the federal government, despite the fact that the federal government is obligated to, through treaty, to provide them a certain amount of social funding. The amount of money they get through partnership and through business investment is in the billions.
Yeah.
The Fort McKay First Nation, they have some of the lowest unemployment in the entire country. What's happening up there is a renaissance, and it's actually, because of this, they're able to fund cultural initiatives
Yep.
to grow their country, celebrate their culture, expand their culture, while poverty in Indigenous communities kills the culture. And it's white liberals or socialists, for that matter, usually from very far away,
Yep.
who are protesting against Indigenous jobs in these communities. It's people like Sephora Berman, who flies all the way to Madrid, gathers up a gaggle of Indigenous protesters from the West Coast to protest Teck Mine in Fort McMurray. And nobody ever asks any questions about it.
It's the old biblical saying, isn't it, Sheila? Give a man a fish, feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, feed him for life. Ottawa seems to be in the position of, we just rather hand out welfare checks rather than have these Indigenous groups create their own industry and provide something tangible to the economy and to society. It is disgraceful.
Well, yeah, and now they've taken that idea of providing welfare instead of jobs and then patting themselves on the back because they're taking care of you. They're now going to apply that to all of Alberta because this internal dispute within the Liberal Party about whether or not to approve this, something that should have been rubber stamped 5 years ago project, they're saying, oh, well, we better prepare an aid package for Alberta if we don't we don't want anything. Get out of our way and let us get 7,000 jobs. Alberta lost nearly 19,000 jobs last month.
Last month. So in 31 days, 19,000 jobs were lost.
And this is the prime time in the oil patch. From the end of December to really sort of the beginning of March, that's it's go time because the winter roads are frozen. Everybody's moving. Everybody's drilling. They're able to get to places that they can't in the summer because of the muskeg and the thaw. So this is when everybody's supposed to be working. We lost 19,000 jobs.
Wow.
And they're going to nuke 7,000 permanent jobs in this. And then they're preparing an aid package for us so that they can say, oh, look, we helped you. Well, by the way, where's that aid package money coming from?
Yeah.
Us? It's not coming from Quebec. We've got so many super chats. I could talk about Teck Mine all day. It just makes me so mad. We've got one from Kelly Burdick, $5. I don't see a super chat there, but thank you very much. We've got one from Bernard Hutchison, $2.79. Says, hi, Sheila. Hello. Thank you for bearing with me as I launch the show by myself. If my internet seems a little fuzzy, it's because it's a PD day for my kids, so they're probably both on Netflix upstairs somewhere. There's one that's, I think that's from The Great Informer, and it says, anyone taken Hutterite issue to Kenny, the RCMP. We have put a lot of pressure on the new Justice Minister here, Doug Schweitzer. He's very red Tory, very left-wing, doesn't like the rebel, very urban. I think he's the wrong guy to deal with this issue. I'm happy to see that there's charges laid, but I'd like to see the same charges laid on the co-op protesters, and we'll get to that later on in the show. It's on our list of things to talk about. Share the stream. Censorship could be getting bad. Bernard Hutchison, $2.79. Bernard, very generous today. Yeah, if everyone wouldn't mind sharing the stream wide and far. Sometimes people aren't getting those notifications from YouTube, and I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but big tech sure leads me to be one some days.
By the way, Sheila, you mentioned your kids getting onto Netflix. I applaud that. I guess they're trying to beat the Netflix tax that might be applied by Heritage Minister Steve Guilbeault, as well as regulating and licensing media outlets. You know, I think this was one of the most incredible stories of the week. And, you know, it was, and I think the Liberals got caught off guard here, Sheila. You know, they give out $1.5 billion to the CBC. You know, there's $595 million for the print bailout. I think they thought that with all the major players in the mainstream media, they had brought domestication. And suddenly there was outrage over this idea of licensing and regulating news outlets and media outlets. It was almost like, you know, in the old days of the circus, the lion tamer, he's got all the lions on their pods, and then he starts to lose control of the act, and he's going, what the hell? You know, I've got a chair and a whip, and yet they're still clawing at me. You know, the thing about this, Sheila, first of all, this minister, as you can see on the video, don't take my word for it, folks, he says, oh yeah, we're going to go through with it, and then he says no. But there was a very good interview by Evan Solomon. I give credit where credit is due, and it was simply this: Mr. Minister, define a news outlet. He can't define it. I mean, is a news outlet something that's exclusively news? Is it something that's news and opinion? Is it something that's part of the mainstream or a one-man shop? He wouldn't define it. So if they can't even define, Sheila, what it is they want to regulate and tax and license, that gives me the heebie-jeebies.
Yeah, I just want to cruise through these last couple of super chats.
Oh, I'm sorry.
David. No, it's okay. One from Sailing on a Budget, perchance, despite sailing on a budget, gave us $2 for audio equipment.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Hopefully they'll use that to get everything sorted out in the office. And one from Proud Boys Calgary. Happy Friday, Justin. $6.99 Canadian. Boat and outdoor show this weekend in Calgary. My boating accident is scheduled for this spring. My poor guns, I hardly knew ya. Yeah. Get them now while you can, and don't let the government know you have them.
But by the way, Sheila, since Proud Boys Calgary mentioned a boating accident in the outdoor show, I heard this just on the drive-in, and I think we should do a piece on this. Evidently, there's Twiggy, the water skiing squirrel. He's being banned from the Vancouver boat show, the authorities here in Toronto told the Toronto Boat Show that when it wrapped last month, that's the last time they can have Twiggy. Why are we going to bat for a rodent that seems to be having fun water skiing? I mean, the original Twiggy, I think we're into like 9 generations of this animal, was a squirrel that was found abandoned and was going to actually die in the wild, was nursed back to health, and was trained to water ski. So again, these are bureaucrats with animal services or what have you that are looking for a problem that doesn't exist for them to fix it. But here's the bigger question, Sheila. If you're saying that a water skiing squirrel that is being very well treated is offside because of, I don't know, animal slavery, then what do we do about seeing eye dogs? What do we do about the police with their bomb sniffing dogs? I guess, are they going to be legislated out of their existence too? Because I can't tell the difference.
So, David, explain this to me, because this is so crazy. It sounds so crazy. Is the original water skiing squirrel still alive and performing at the boat show?
No, I don't think so. I think they're on to the 8th or 9th one.
So these squirrels are actually learning how to water ski like generation after generation?
Yeah, you can go on.
This is amazing.
It's an international sensation. There are conspiracy kooks out there saying that the squirrel is super glued to the water skis. That's garbage. That would be animal cruelty. But that's not what is happening here. So again, if we are looking at a water skiing squirrel that seems very happy, you know, Sheila, where I live in Richmond's Hill, there are squirrels galore. They are neurotic. They are always running around looking for something to eat and running away from things that want to eat them, okay? If I was a squirrel and you're saying I get to travel around the world water skiing and I get all my almonds and cashews for free and I don't have to worry about a coyote gulping me down, hey, sign me up. Like, who are we trying to, and it's not like it's an endangered species. It's a squirrel. It's a rat with a furry tail.
Well, I don't, who's complaining? That's the thing, like, who's complaining about the indentured squirrels? Who out there thinks this is an important issue for humanity? Squirrels are a plague. I live in a log house. I have nightmares about squirrels eating my house. I have a wonderful cat named Margaret Scratcher who loves to eat the squirrels and keep them away from my house, and, you know, keeps down on my cat food costs, and it keeps the squirrels out of the attic. But I don't know what kind of busybody people out there are making the issue of hardworking, performing squirrels their cause to take up. I just, you know, and these are probably the same people who are pro, like, let me just go back a step. I watch a lot of carnivore dieters critiquing vegan, what I eat in a day videos on YouTube. It's like my secret pleasure. I usually watch one a night. These vegans are usually like, you can't eat eggs because they could become chickens.
Yeah.
And yet, in another video, they'll brag about their abortion and they can't make the connection.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I bet you it's the same thing with these pro-squirrel people. They're out there at the Women's March, marching for reproductive rights, which is just the right to abort your baby at any term of their existence. And yet they're out there at the same time protesting squirrels water skiing. It's just bizarre.
No,
and
when these
every day we aren't hit by a comet is a day we're operating on borrowed time.
Yeah. No, when you're quite right, Sheila. When Efren and I went out to do a segment outside a restaurant that was being picketed by these militant vegans, that was my question. What is your? Because they had signage that you see basically at pro-life demonstrations. Everyone has a right to live. You know, we support life. So I said, well, does this apply to women and the abortion issue? And every one of them said no comment. They couldn't go there. You know, so they're completely hypocritical, or they actually are speciesists themselves, putting animals ahead of humans, even though they themselves are humans, or a reasonable facsimile. They are vegans after all.
Yeah, they like to talk about nature, but then forget like humans are actually an animal that is in nature, and so we have things that we need to eat and we need to consume just like every other animal for us to be at optimal health. You were trying to segue, though, back into Stephen Guilbeault.
Oh, yes.
And his Chloe, I'm trying to keep the show on track.
Sheila, what is Minister Guilbeault's position on water skiing squirrels? That's what I want to ask the minister.
Yeah.
Should they be licensed and regulated?
I think that is actually a matter of Canadian heritage. If this squirrel has been water skiing, or his family has been water skiing for generations, I think this is a cultural heritage issue, and I'd like to see him on the $5 bill. That's what I want. David, are you under the weather, by the way? I heard that you were.
Yes, but you know, when I heard that you needed me, Sheila, I came to your rescue, much like that incident on the bus in Israel where you had to go to the bathroom really, really bad, and I got you into the men's room to get around the line at the women's room. Do you remember that, Sheila? Those are the lengths I will go for Sheila Gunn Reid, SGR. What do you think about that?
David, that was private, and now you told the whole world. Like when you told them that I'm claustrophobic or that I get car sick. And, like,
Sheila, you were
David.
crying. Everybody knew what was happening.
Okay, Mr. Producer, can we cut to that Stephen Guilbeault video
please.
so that I can give David a hard time off camera?
The Yale report that was issued last week by an independent panel contained 97 recommendations, including some on the broadcasting rules to adapt those rules to the new digital age. These are very complex issues, and our government will take time to study those recommendations before putting forward regulatory framework that will reflect Canadian values. So far as news organizations go, the report itself specifically recommends that they be exempted from the proposed spending and discoverability obligations that would apply to other media undertakings. Let me be clear. Our government has no intention to impose licensing requirements on news organizations, nor will we try to regulate news content. We are committed to a free and independent press, which is essential to our democracy. Our focus will be, and always has been, to ensure that Canadians have access to diversity of high quality and credible news sources. We will speak again when we have legislation to present.
You know, Sheila, I wish this guy would go back to making license plates at Millhaven or Kingston or wherever he was incarcerated. But, you know, here's the thing. Again, I come down to his own weaselly words. What is the definition of a news organization? What is the definition of news content? Is he speaking solely of the Mean Girls, you know, CBC, Toronto Star, Globe and Mail? Or is there a different standard, well, for us, for the bright parts of the world? That's the problem. He will not define it. So I think this is terrifying. I take no comfort in those statements until he defines the terms that he's using.
Well, we can't even fight back until he defines the words that he's using. It's just like the loosely defined definition of hate speech,
Yes.
which is basically anything that the Liberals don't like or don't want to hear, or uncomfortable truths sometimes, or things that aren't true, but who cares? People have a right to say them. They want to regulate that without really defining it. And it's the same thing here. And, you know, what are the requirements for licensing if they are going to license this thing that they can't define?
But you know,
have
Sheila,
to...
I'm glad you brought up hate speech, because this is a crucial thing. You know, the internet is relatively new in terms of, you know, the historical timeline. It's been a blink of an eyelash since the internet's been around. But the rules still apply. By the rules, I mean libel, slander, defamation. So even as an individual, if you go on to social media and you say, you know, well, such and such is a pedophile, well, you're opening yourself up to a lawsuit. You know, it's that plain and simple. So if there are already entrenched classical rules against libeling and slandering a person that the courts can deal with, and I mean the real courts, not kangaroo courts like human rights tribunals, then what's the problem?
Well, yeah, and I mean, going back to things that are already decided, our Charter of Rights and Freedoms has already decided that we have freedom of the press, and freedom of the press means free from regulation, because regulation makes something inherently not free. I mean, if we have, David, you have coronavirus. So,
you know what? Well, I was interviewing those people returning from China a week ago. What's the incubation period? I'm doing the math here. Carry the one. Yeah, you know what? I think maybe I should drive up to Trenton after this and join the new crew flying in.
That's just a cheap way for you to get a day off. I see right through what you're trying to do here.
That's true. Yes, folks.
But anyway,
just in case anyone confuses me with James Patok, I do not have the coronavirus. Continue, Sheila.
Yeah, no, don't write us letters. Don't call the Health Canada on us. We're joking.
Yeah, don't turn your computers off.
The Charter of Rights and Freedoms already says that Canadians have freedom of speech, and we have the free press here. And at the Rebel, we've defended it, that concept, several times. We defended it in Alberta when we were banned by Rachel Notley. We defended it to get you and Kian access to the federal debates. If they want to try to regulate us, bring it on. Bring it on. That's a fight that I think we would love to have, because it's just another bad law that we'll work to smash, just like we're working to smash the Federal Elections Commissioner. We got the Elections Commissioner fired here in Alberta. I want to take credit for that. Lauren Gibson was fired after he tried to prosecute me for my book. Hopefully we can do the same thing at the federal level for those trying to prosecute Ezra for his book.
Hey, Sheila, what about that failure of a police officer who is now part of the bureaucracy who was going after you personally? Is he still around? And I believe he killed a couple of people while on duty. Isn't that part of his record? Like, actually killed them, right?
Yes.
He's still around, I guess, right?
He's still around. He'll stay. I believe he's still taking government contracts to investigate elections, finance, laws. It's just you just seem to fail up in government, don't you?
But
keep
you know what,
failing
Sheila?
up the ladder to the very top.
You did take on the bureaucracy. You did win. You did, in my opinion, set a precedent. But that's the thing. They're still going after us, and I speak about Ezra, of course, and his book, The Libranos, which is, a mirror image case of what you went through in Alberta, and yet they don't seem to care, do they? Because the process is the penalty. They know even if they have a no-hoper, they'll put us through, they'll consume our time, they'll consume our resources, i.e. tens of thousands of dollars, and even if they know they're going to lose, like I said, you can win the battle and lose the war. That is their end goal. It has nothing to do with any kind of moral or ethical base to base this case on.
Well, they did the exact same thing when you guys had to sue to get into the debates.
Yep.
They gave us no warning. We had to have lawyers work basically 24 hours a day over the weekend to present our case. It cost us tens of thousands of dollars. If we didn't have that, how could we fight it? How could we hire these, I would say, best and brightest in the biz in Toronto, young lawyers to work night and day to prepare a case, to argue a case, to win a case, if we weren't able to have those resources to fight back? Because the federal government spent, I think it was 5 times what we did to fight us in court. I don't even know how you can hire that many lawyers to do that much work over the weekend, but they did just to fight us, and then they appealed it. Even after we won, even after you had access to the debates, they're willing to appeal it because it's important for them to just waste our money. They're ragging the puck to bleed us dry.
Sheila, wasn't that amazing? That was actually, correct me if I'm wrong, but after the Trudeau Liberals were returned to power on October 21st, that was really their first official order of business, wasn't it? That we're going to appeal, getting True North and the Rebel into the debates. And, to me, when you think of the multitude of dire issues our great Dominion is facing, This is just a petty vendetta. It reminds me of the tagline from Jaws 4. This time it's personal. You know, they are going after us because they have a visceral hatred to those who call foul on them, who aren't getting in line with the mainstream media trained seals, and applauding these people, of course, for a paycheck for everything they do. That's what it suggests to me, Sheila.
Well, yeah, and I think that brings us perfect circle back to Guilbeault and his remarks about regulation. They can't control us in the courts.
Yep.
They can't. They can't bleed us dry financially, or despite trying, because we have this highly motivated, very generous viewer base who cares about these issues just as much as we do. Thank you very much, by the way, everybody, for donating to our legal battles against the Trudeau government. They can't get us that way. So what they're going to do is try to regulate us to death. And we won't qualify for regulation or the bar to be regulated. What if there's some sort of licensing fee? Maybe that's it. Maybe that's the way they prevent new upstart media outlets, conservative ones maybe, from getting into the space, if you will, by just making a big, huge licensing fee.
Yeah, and Sheila...
Who knows what they're going to do?
Well, and also, this is a very important point you've raised. How much is that licensing fee going to be? Is it going to be like $52, or is it going to be 6 figures, or 7? You know, this is... So in other words, say it's $1 million for a license. Well, you've economically penalized the vast majority of startups hoping to get into this business. You know, is that what it is? I don't know. They haven't said what the fee is, right?
They haven't said, and they said they're not going to talk to us again until there's legislation ready. So they're sitting back in a dark corner. They're not consulting with, as they like to say they do when they're drafting legislation, we consulted with stakeholders. Do you think they're going to talk to us, or are they going to talk to the Toronto Star and the penny stalkers over there and the CBC, who nobody watches? I think they get below 6% or something like that for their primetime news. That's who they're consulting about how to regulate their competitors, their successful competitors, out of business. They're not going to talk to us. Yeah. They're certainly not going to talk to True North. They won't talk to the Western Standard. That's a new upstart here in Alberta. They seem to be doing very well. They certainly won't talk to the likes of Breitbart, who have reporters in Canada who report on Canadian issues. Are they going to need a license? And what's that going to do with our trade deals to the United States? Does anybody trust these Liberals to actually give some serious thought to this, or is it just going to be like their vagaries that they wrote into the pipeline legislation about gender equality written into pipeline legislation? I think it's going to be that crazy and that vague, and it's going to be something that nobody can meet except the Liberal favorites.
But, you know, then again, we have high hopes, don't we, that there will be regime change in the next election. I mean, that Peter MacKay, he's just flying out of the gate. What a great week he had, eh, Sheila? Holy mackerel.
Oh, yeah, he's really blowing my hair back, that guy. I mean, and just the flip-flops on basic conservative issues.
I know.
Like Ezra said, Ezra's not so much hung up on whether or not the embassy moves to Jerusalem. I care about that probably a lot more than most people, but it is a conservative thing.
Yep.
That's the capital. Israel's a sovereign state. It's the eternal capital. Our American allies have already moved their embassy there. The conservative base has already decided that this is what we should be doing. Why couldn't he agree to that? He said no, and then the very next day when he realized, I really stepped in it, he walks it back and says, it was a misunderstanding. No, it's not a misunderstanding, except insofar that Peter MacKay doesn't understand what the conservative base wants.
No, it's less Harper and more Joe Clark, more Andrew Scheer. Sheila, as you know, I went out to the old mill last Saturday for a meet and greet. The first thing I was told, no questions. What? This is the guy that wants to be prime minister? Well, we don't, we don't get in line like the domesticated seals. So I asked him a question anyways, which was about Ezra's interrogation of writing the Libranos. And he was all over the map. I don't really know about it. And then I said, what do your conservative colleagues have to say? He says, you go ask them. It was so wishy-washy. Now, first of all, I don't believe he hadn't heard about this, and freedom of speech is a huge conservative talking point. What I would have done is I would have said, well, if what you're saying is truthful and accurate, then this is an outrage, and if I become prime minister, we are not going to have bureaucrats enlisted as attack dogs to go after authors for writing books critical of any government. Out of the ballpark home run. Instead, I was ushered off. Then he goes on CTV, and the reporter starts asking a question about, because he was talking about bringing civility back into politics, and she said, was it civil to raise the fact that Justin Trudeau used $800 of Liberal Party of Canada funds to buy yoga mats and spa sessions? And that's when his handlers cut the interview off, because where the interview was going, and the reporter was right on track, if you ask me, Sheila, is that if it wasn't right to use $800 for yoga stuff, then how was it, as an MP, you justified $16,000 for a military helicopter to pick you up from a fishing trip? But the thing is, his handlers come in. Now, if you're a true leader, you say to your handlers, no, I'm going to handle this. I'm going to answer this. And his answer was pathetic too, which was, A, I don't vet my own tweets, right? Really? You're not even writing your own tweets? So B, he throws a member of his team under the bus. And C, well, I'm sorry, those team members you picked and approved. You were the leader. Remember, the buck stops here. And by the way, Sheila, even though he said, I regret the Justin Trudeau $800 yoga tweet, the last time I checked, unless something's happened in the last few hours, that tweet was still there. It hasn't been removed. So I don't know what to believe other than I'm having an uncanny feeling of deja vu given the Andrew Scheer years. And it's so disappointing because, so many people are talking about this guy as the heir apparent.
Well, yeah, I mean, it seems as though he's been waiting in the wings for, 15 years, and it's his time to be coronated.
Yeah.
The problem is the conservative base doesn't believe in coronations because that's how Justin Trudeau came to be. And as a conservative, I'm sort of happy that Justin Trudeau is wasting their campaign funds and their party funds on yoga lessons. It's just $800 that he didn't spend campaigning against conservatives. I hope he blows more money on yoga, to be quite honest with you, as long as the taxpayers aren't paying for it. That's an issue that internally that liberals are supposed to care about, just the same way conservatives are mad that we paid for Andrew Scheer's private school for his kids. For him to bring that up and then not realize the correlation to what Andrew Scheer had just done, I mean, it's crazy. We have so many super chats to get through, and we still have so many things on the list of things we need to talk about. Everybody, thank you for those super chats. I'm trying to keep the show on the road here. We've got one from Sailing on a Budget. No, this one, I'm sorry, this is from The Great Informer. For David, lawsuit against the Toronto Police, $2. Yes, thank you very much. David is suing the York Regional Police.
Correct.
For getting a little handsy with him and inhibiting him from doing his job. So that's just another group of people or person that has to be brought before a judge and told that what they are doing is wrong. And if we have to turn ourselves into a public interest law firm, and a news agency to do that, I guess that's what we're going to do.
Well, we have no choice, Sheila, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. If we want to be able to do our jobs, we have to make sure that everybody knows that they have to leave us alone to do our jobs. We've got one that says, share the stream and Rebel News get on Parler, from Bernard Hutchison for $2.79. David, please use protective gear on street work. Primpal 08, $5. Don't read this. Proud Boys Calgary, $2.79. Says, didn't the squirrel star in Brad Paisley's Riverbank? Yes, he's in that video. The skiing squirrel is in the Brad Paisley video, yes. Sailing
Sheila,
on budget.
Mr. Producer just informed me that you're one name behind, I think.
I'm one name behind. What did I miss? Justin will leave that in the chat for me.
Oh, every super chat is by the person above.
By the person above.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
You don't have to thank
Bernard,
me, Sheila. Educating others is what I do. just knowing that I've improved the intellect of a person out there who is confused and frightened is my reward in life. Continue.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly what you do. You improve my intellect. Okay, Propeller Wait, $5 says, don't read this. Oh, but I did. Don't tell me what to do. Proud Boys Calgary, 270. Okay, we did that. Okay, sailing on a budget perchance, despite the budget, $5. For my cat, Margaret Scratcher will be very appreciative. Annalisa gives us $2.79, says, keep up the great work. Love you all. Thank you. We will. And we appreciate your support here at Rebel News. Gordon Smith, $5. No super chat. Just a very generous man. Bernard Hutchison, $2.79. How can an eco-terrorist criminal Guilbeault be an MP? Well, anything is possible when you're a liberal. Look at SNC Lavalin. You can break all the rules you want. You can buy hookers for Muammar Gaddafi's kid and get government contracts. The world is your oyster when you're a liberal.
You know what it reminds me of, Sheila, is Stanley Kubrick's 1972 masterpiece, A Clockwork Orange, in which Britain in the near future is a completely lawless society. And it gets to the point that the authorities have thrown up their hands, and out of ineptitude and political correctness, they decide to recruit the police officers from the gang members that are incarcerated in their jails. And there's that incredible scene, it's so disturbing, where Alex is confronted by two cops coming to his aid, and it turns out the two cops are his former gang members that hate him, and they drag him off to a field and beat the living you-know-what out of him. So I guess, is this the Canada of 2020? We're going a Clockwork Orange route, find out who the bad guys are and empower them as ministers. What could go wrong, Sheila?
What could possibly go wrong? Bernard Hutchison, $2.79, says liberals say no intention, they have all intention. Yeah, isn't that true? It's just a bunch of doublespeak from these guys every time. It's when they say things like diversity, we need to be more diverse, but then they impose all these things on you that make your views homogenous with the government. It's they say things and then they do the opposite. It's very Orwellian. Sailing on a budget perchance is blowing the budget again with $1.99 Canadian. Thank you. No super chat though. Bernard Hutchison corrects David. See, Bernard Hutchison is expanding David's intellect by correcting him. $2.79 Canadian says it was $60,000 for McKay's chopper ride from camp.
Oh.
I don't know the details. I just remember that it was something ridiculous, and it was a big scandal for Stephen Harper's fiscally conservatives.
Sheila, that's the reason I failed grade 11 math. I always forgot to carry the 1.
Clausen Lord Virulence gives us $5. Enjoy a few real dollars. I can't see on my screen here if those are American dollars or Canadian pesos. Sailing on a budget perchance, another $2 for David's lawsuit against the Toronto Police. I think I already said that one, but Mr. Producer's just trying to catch me up because we really let this drive into the weeds here. Cindy McSeven, $20 Canadian. Gosh, Cindy, thank you so much. Thank you for all you do. We must continue the fight until this Communist Party is out. You know what? We are going to keep fighting. We'll keep fighting as long as we can. And when they attack us, we'll keep fighting. And when they attack you, we'll keep fighting. Because somebody has to. We can't count on anybody else in the mainstream media to defend free speech or freedom of the press. It falls squarely on us.
Now, Sheila, is it the Communist Party or the Marxist-Leninist Party? That always fascinates me during election campaigns. When you get to the bottom fringe candidates, there's always a guy with the Communist Party and a guy with the Marxist-Leninist Party. Can't we, unite the commies? I mean, what is the tangible difference when you're a Communist Party member versus a Marxist-Leninist Party member? Can you explain that to me?
Well, they did unite in the United States. They're called the Democrats. Should we move on, though, to... Okay, we covered Guilbeault. Should we talk about... David, you can choose. You know what? Let's talk about what Ezra was up to the other day.
Okay.
He went to meet with Glenn Beck from Blaze TV, and he went to deliver something on behalf of Rebel viewers and supporters, something I'm very proud to say that I was a part of. At the end of November, I quietly, unannounced, because nobody needs to get kidnapped, I went to Iraqi Kurdistan 2 years after our initial trip to the region, to document the plight of the Christian communities in the Nineveh Plain, particularly the ones that fell behind ISIS enemy lines. And 2 years out, I wanted to see the progress that the Christian communities were making, either staying or going, because there are ones that absolutely refuse to leave. It's their land. This is the land the apostles walked on, and they won't be purged from it. But there are some that say that they want to leave, that they have no future there. They can't raise their kids there when it's one ethnic cleansing after another. ISIS is gone now, thank you, Trump. But now the Iranian militias are moving in, and they're not any better. And so Ezra flew down to meet with Glenn Beck because of the trip that I took there and our fundraising drive before Christmas, we were able to raise an additional over $30,000 for the Christian communities to either reclaim their lives in their Indigenous homeland or to leave and receive a future for their children in places like Australia, because they can't come here. We don't take them. We don't prioritize victims of genocide, particularly persecuted Christians, in our immigration queue anymore, the way Stephen Harper did. So a lot of them are going to Eastern Europe or Australia. So if Mr. Producer has that clip of one of the best things that I've ever been a part of in my entire life, please roll it.
We go back to your help on the Nazarene Fund, which I find you have used your platform to do good and raise money every month, and you're sending the Nazarene Fund $5,000 every month, which I've known you for how long have we known each other?
Well, I meet you once and then I go away for months, and I meet you once and I've enjoyed it for years.
You introduce yourself every time, and I think I say every time, I know who you are. And,
well, you meet so many people.
I know, and I found out, somebody said to me last time we met, somebody said, do you realize what he's doing for the Nazarene Fund? I said, no idea. You never said a word about it.
Well, because it's not me, it's our viewers.
No,
so
I know.
We crowdfund. I mentioned we went to Iraq and we saw this terrible situation.
Yeah.
And so we raised some money, but it's a very low trust society. That's a very friendly way of saying a corrupt place.
Yes.
And the first 3 people we went to, we wanted to give it to a pharmacy, we wanted to give it to a charity. I could feel that it was going to be purloined, stolen. In fact, we delivered some food on our first trip there, and we were charged quadruple the price in the market.
Yeah.
Everyone's ripping you off. And in the end, I found the Nazarene Fund, and I did my due diligence. I read your IRS filings. I read as much as I could.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it was ironic. I was going overseas to find a place to trust. It was actually here in North America that I found the one charity I trust not to waste the money, not to pocket the money. And so we just baby steps started giving, and I wanted to keep it low key. And then we sent one of our reporters over there in November just to see with her own eyes, what are you guys doing on the ground? And she put together a bunch of videos.
Oh, I don't think I've even seen these.
Well, we have them up on our website, rebelnews.com.
Okay.
In fact, we just strung them all together.
Okay.
About 45 minutes worth of video. Just one of our reporters on her own with a selfie stick and a cell phone spent 2 or 3 days with your guys, watching the families being taken in.
It's amazing.
And so we made it our Christmas drive. Our reporter went there in November, and in December we said to our viewers, hey, let's chip in, let's make this our Christmas drive. And so I have here a check from our viewers. Now it's in Canadian mini bucks, so it's slightly.
So it's about a third of flesh.
It's not that bad, but I'm delighted to give you a check for $30,907 from viewers of Rebel News. Our reporter Sheila Gunn-Reid went there, checked you guys out. I'll be honest. I said, check them out, make sure they're doing what they say they're doing.
Yeah, we want you to.
And Sheila, I said, be skeptical, because we're giving some dough.
Money.
Sheila came back and she said, these are the best guys doing work in extremely difficult circumstances. And I thought, well, I'm in.
Well, thank you.
So there's almost 31 grand there, and we'll continue our monthly support. And it's because we trust you.
Thank you.
You know, Sheila, I have to correct you what you said before you went to that clip. You said that you were a little part of this. No, you and Ezra are actually the driving forces of this fundraising event. And, you know, to me, it's a good news, bad news story. The good news is we raised more than $30,000 thanks to the generosity of our beloved viewers to give to the Nazarene Fund. The bad news is, I don't know if you know this or not, but we had an office pool, and I did put $5 down that you'd be kidnapped. So I personally lost $5 because you didn't get kidnapped. But anyways, it all turns out well in the end, I guess, right?
You'll get me next time, David. Yeah, you know, just let me stop one more time and thank everybody at home for pitching in, for sharing those videos, for sharing the link to the fundraiser. I cannot tell you the difference that just even a small amount of money is making in the lives of the Christians who are recovering from a genocide there. When I was there, you know, you're moving so fast, you haven't really slept in 96 hours, you're trying to listen to the security team all the time, and it wasn't until I got home and sort of decompressed, or when I was like in an 8-hour layover in the Vienna airport, that it really hit me, just the shame I feel, because our churches aren't praying, our churches aren't doing enough.
Yep.
And I guess if not us, then who? Because the Western world is truly failing these Christians. However, we should keep moving.
And you know,
No, go
Sheila,
ahead.
I can't stress enough the importance of what Ezra said to Glenn Beck there about checking out who you're going to give the money to. He used the words low trust society as being a pseudonym for corruption. You know, folks, the amount of corruption, the amount of people who pass themselves off in that part of the world as something who they are not, and they're all about being out for number one. Just finding the right people, the right charity to give this money so it doesn't go into somebody's pockets, that was like half the battle, wasn't it, Sheila?
It really was. And, you know, part of my trip there was to do accountability journalism on ourselves. We collected this money on behalf of our viewers. Now it's on us to prove that it is going where we said it was going, and it's doing what it's supposed to be doing.
Yep.
And if it's not, it's on us to correct that, because we have an obligation to be accountable to the people who entrust us with these funds to do what we say we're doing. So, while it was important for me to go over there and tell the stories of the Christians who are either leaving or going, and why they're there and what's happening and what they've been through, it was equally important for me to prove that we are not contributing to the low trust society and the corruption over there, that when we collect money on behalf of our viewers, that it is going where it says, where we say it's going. And if it means me going to Iraq for a week, then I will, because it's important. It's that important, because our relationship with our viewers is built on trust.
And you know, Sheila, I should mention here, if our viewers want to see some of the incredible videos that we got in Iraq, go to SaveTheChristians.com. And as we said, every single penny that we solicited for donations, every single penny went to that charity. But folks, if you want to kick in a few bucks to fund Sheila's trip, her expenses, her accommodations, that's a completely separate thing. We weren't, mixing the pots here. So if you want to help us recover our own personal costs, thank you so much for that.
Okay, we should clip through some of these super chats, because there still are some up before we wrap up the show. Again, fastest hour on TV. We didn't even get to 3 things that were on my list, including Jonathan Yaniv and his poorly behaved mum wanting to attack me.
Yes, the freak show was back in town in BC, folks.
Oh, boy. What, it's something to see that up close. Everybody should just once in their life. David, wow.
Please, I scare easy.
Well, you saw. There were no canes. David, we're healing. We're like physical therapy for Jonathan Yaniv. Because every time we catch him on camera, he is sprier and more athletic than the time before. Jeremy Paul gives us $10. I watch many of your videos. What are your thoughts on vote Wexit? My thoughts are that Albertans are entitled to a say. Our politicians should get out of the way and let us have our say. Vote Wexit is not a political movement, or it shouldn't be a political movement. It's a vote for our sovereignty and whatever that means, in the same way that Brexit wasn't so much a political movement as a populist uprising. Primpal 08 gives us $5. Globalism is a kind of hybrid of all the different flavors of socialism. Yes, indeed, it is centralized control, and isn't that socialism? A little communism, a little fascism, a little Nazism, and a lot of corruption. I agree with you in that it is a form of socialism in that it takes away the sovereignty of the individual and gives it to something collective. Justin, oh, that's from Justin. That's from Mr. Producer. I'm just reading things to read them now. Sailing on a Budget perchance gives us $1.99 Canadian and says, thank you. And my computer is telling me that it is 1 minute after the hour. David? Let's wrap her up.
What, 1 minute after the hour? My goodness, Sheila, if I was a teacher with one of the public sector trade unions, I'd have to file out a requisition form for overtime, wouldn't I? I mean, but here at the Rebel, we let that slide because we love doing what we're doing. Well, Sheila, you're right. We've got overtime, and we didn't even get to half the things that you mentioned. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in. Please forgive my lateness. I think we had a centimeter of snow, which means the city of Toronto grinds to a halt. But anyways, Sheila, thank you so much for pitching in as well. Have a wonderful and safe weekend, and I'm sure Ezra will be back in this space next Friday. Take care.